to give everyone a quick background, Nelson has supported this dialogue since its inception last year. We met him briefly along at the sidelines of Anga in September, and we said we want to come to Cape Town, and he said, you're more than welcome to, and you have my full backing and support. Unfortunately, he had some commitments last time, so he couldn't join us in person, but we're delighted, Nelson, that your schedule was available and we can have you in person this time. So may I please invite Nelson Muffuh, our UN Resident Coordinator in South Africa, to speak to us.
Well, thank you indeed to the program director. It's a pleasure that I'm able to join this year, and I think it is only really important that we support all efforts of this nature that really seek to advance the aspirations of people of the Global South. But of course, let me stand on existing protocol, whilst of course acknowledging the patron of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation and our main convener, as well as all the other dignitaries that were acknowledged this morning. I note in the room the presence of the former minister, as well as some ambassadors and also distinguished participants. It gives us, as the UN family, great pleasure, really, to be part of this effort and to join and accompany accomplished thought leaders from the Global South who are really dealing with something that is quite pertinent if we really want to assure the well-being of people and planet going into the future. The UN family, including in India, already works quite closely with the ORF, and certainly in South Africa, we had to do the same. And the teams that Max Bokwana, as well as Samia Saran are leading, we find them to be really strategic partners in advancing the work we're trying to achieve, all around the Sustainable Development Goals, all around silencing the guns, all around fostering social cohesion, and other aspects that are so important. My boss, the UN Secretary General, just last September in New York, when the world leaders gathered for the Summit of the Future, indicated something really that is troubling and goes to the heart of the conversation that we're going to be having over the next few days. He said, huge inequalities are a brake on sustainable development. Many developing countries are drowning in debt and unable to support their people. The climate crisis is destroying lives, devastating communities, and ravaging economies. New technologies, including AI, are being developed in a moral and legal vacuum without governance or guardrails. And that's why the Cape Town Conversations is truly timely, as we need to foster global solidarity and South-South cooperation, as well as ensure African leadership in efforts to urgently address these pressing issues. We have a collective ethical imperative to leave a better world for current and future generations. And that's precisely why member states, as convened by the Secretary General of the UN, met at the Summit of the Future, as I indicated, with the sole objective of building consensus and to propel reform of the global governance, security, and financial architecture, as well as to advance equitable governance of AI, and not to forget turbocharging the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, which are severely off track. And so we need increased financing to be able to propel the ambitious transitions that you heard the previous panel also highlight. So there's emerging consensus that it is now time to move away from unkept promises and talking to tangible actions that really deliver on the aspirations of people around the world. And it must be said that outdated multilateral arrangements and unequal structures, including the UN Security Council, which was established in a post-Second World War era, cannot be maintained as if a significant part of the world is not meant to be part of the solution and the quest to look for comprehensive solutions in the midst of a polycrisis. We talk about intensifying, cascading, and interlinked security, environmental, commercial, and developmental challenges that need to be addressed head-on. Former President, Excellencies, distinguished participants, you've heard that in a few days, South Africa will take on the responsibility to steer the G20, the first time an African country will be doing that. And as Samir also indicated in the morning, it must and will build on the work of the G20 presidencies of Indonesia, India, Brazil. And it is expected, and we hope, it will give continuity to not only the Pact for the Future that came out of the UN, but most importantly as well, the G20 agendas that focus on tackling global inequities as per the aspirations of the Global South. That's why the United Nations is very encouraged by the G20 priorities, initiatives, and theme announced by the government of South Africa, which is around fostering solidarity, equity, and sustainability. And to advance this through key priority areas that include reform of the global financial architecture, something which the Secretary General has been pushing for over the last few years, as well as to ensure that issues of critical minerals, the new scramble for Africa, is addressed, food security, and of course, AI, as I earlier mentioned. And building on what came out of Brazil and its presidency through the G20 declaration that was issued, we need to ensure that this continuity that is so much sought after is maintained. And we really move, as the previous panel also indicated, in prioritizing what the Global South needs in an inclusive consensus-building process, just like other parts of the world are doing when they approach such discussions. Excellencies and distinguished participants, as I conclude, permit me to quote an eminent African and United Nations icon, Kofi Annan, who once said, "What governments and people don't realize is that sometimes the collective interest, that is the international shared interest around global commons and public goods, is actually also the national interest. And as leaders from Africa and the Global South, we must take it upon ourselves to lead the effort of fostering global solidarity through enhanced consensus building, mobilizing financing, silencing the guns around the world, not only on the African continent, advancing social cohesion, managing and benefiting from our natural resources and human resources, and drive sustainable development that benefits people everywhere. It is essential that we continue and keep strengthening the South-South and triangular cooperation, as well as the dialogue between political decision makers and what we say is much needed, a whole of society intervention, which strengthens rather than undermines the multilateral system, including the UN. This is the only way which really we can ensure we rebuild trust and hope and restore legitimacy to international organizations and ensure that global decisions truly benefit people. So in the next few days, we really need to emerge with a call to action that leads to tangible action and not just stay as words on a paper. And I thank you once more, former President Becky, and all the distinguished participants who are really giving their time, energy, and thinking into crafting something that will benefit all. Thank you so much again.